Welcome back to Undulations. This is the third and final video in my series that I'm doing about the Craft Synth 2.0 from Modal Electronics. And I want to focus in this video on connectivity, how you can hook the Craft Synth 2.0 up to other things. Now, some of that's going to be through the Modal App, which is what you saw in the first shot of this video. Some of that is going to be through using direct 5-pin MIDI connections, which the Modal Craft Synth 2.0 has. And some of that is also going to be using a MIDI host box, which basically allows you to sort of hook up MIDI controllers without having to have a laptop or a tablet or that sort of thing. Now, the laptop setup was very easy. That was basically just downloading the Modal app and then hooking a USB cable to the synth and hook another USB cable to the controller. And the laptop sort of acts like a hub in that case. And you can set your parameters for the synth and do things like check your presets and your banks and that sort of thing. Do that all in the app. I'm going to go into that on the latter half of the video, but to start with, I just want to run through some of the connectivity setups. So, laptop's easy. The next question is something like iOS. How would you go about that? And here's a little demo. And in that case, you'll see that you need to have a little something extra. You need to have a camera adapter like this. I think there's an equivalent thing if you're doing an Android tablet or device. You plug that into the Lightning, and then this gives a place for USB cables to plug into. And I've found that for this particular iPad Mini, which is sort of an early generation one, that doesn't have enough power. At least that's what the message says. So you may find if you have an older device, particularly, that you need to add some sort of hub. This honestly doesn't make much sense because I'm not even powering the hub. It's something to do with how the OS recognizes the power requirements, I think. And it will allow you to plug in the Craft Synth and a MIDI controller, as you saw. Now, using 5-pin MIDI cables, that's the easiest part, where all you need is the MIDI cable. And I'm going to run through a couple of things like sequencer, keyboard, that sort of thing. And then the last thing, a USB host. There are different brands. This one is a MIDI Plus. They're not that expensive, and I have found this one to be generally very useful. You plug it in, it's powered by USB, and essentially you can just plug some sort of MIDI controller. I'll try and show a wide variety of them, including the big keyboard over here, where that you can plug the USB from that keyboard into this, and then you get 5-pin MIDI in and out for that, and that can go to the Craft Synth. So it's pretty straightforward if you have one of these. And if you don't, kind of recommend it if you're planning on doing this sort of thing a lot. So rather than really beat around the bush, I'm just going to do a montage of a lot of different connectivity setups, and then we can come back and talk a lot more about the Modal app. It's pretty straightforward to hook the Craft Synth 2.0 up to a lot of different things in quite a few different ways. And I think that's great, but really one of the most fundamental ways is through the Modal App and being able to have access to the synth parameters through that interface. And so let's take a look at the app on the iPad Mini. I'm just going to show it directly on camera, and that way we can go back and forth between the synth and the app very easily. All right, so here we are, and I'm going to leave the camera on autofocus, auto balance, and everything so that when I make this shift over to the app, hopefully the focal plane and the intensity will be okay. And where we're at right now, this isn't exactly where it fires up. I think the app actually starts in the editor, but what I want to talk about is the storage system. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I think it's very reasonable. You've got local banks, so these are things that to start with are the same as what shipped on the Craft Synth, and then you've got basically an image of the banks that are literally on your Craft Synth at this time. And so you click on a bank, you can see the different presets in it, or patches, however you want to think of that. And the way that you can really make a lot of personalization to all of this is that you can add a new local bank. So I just tap that, and then if you scroll down, you'll see now there's local bank number 10. Okay. And then I've also got the ability to tap here on Save to Local and scroll that up to 10. So what this means, right now it's loaded with init patches, but what I can do is go around and grab, say there are patches that I like a lot, and just drop from different banks into this toolbox, and then that will enable me to come over here and do Save to Local on bank 10, and it asks, I want to do that, I do. And then when I come down to bank 10, it's got this set of patches that I picked out. So that's cool, and then you can also save that to a bank on the device, but I'm not going to do that right now. We'll work on an individual patch directly on the device. So this bank structure is basically the way, along with the toolbox, that you can develop sets of sounds and then easily import them over to the device. But now I'm just going to go to bank 1 preset 0. And right now that's lo-fi chords. You also have the ability to name all of your own patches. And so this is sort of the data structure. The other thing I want to show briefly is that you can play from the device. And you can drag this keyboard. It's kind of like in Ableton or something like that, where you can choose what octave you're in. But you can also make a choice of what type of display you want down here. 3 octaves, 2 octaves, 1 octave. It might depend on your finger size a little bit. Then there are some parameters that are directly accessible so that you can, I believe, choose which ones you want to have display on here. And I don't think I ever really talked about how you set up an arpeggio. Let me just, for a little bit of completeness to that, I need to find something that is sort of punchy. Okay, so we'll stick with that. And then I'm going to move over here to the device. And the way that you enter an arpeggio is very intuitive. You just hold down the ARP button and you enter it in. And you can change octaves, of course. Then you can tap the envelope button to enter a rest. Okay, and so that would go like this. And then it's worth pointing out that you can choose a different patch, and that arpeggio will essentially travel with it. Okay, so let's move back to the app. And we've got how we choose our sounds in the storage. We've got the how to play live, and I'm not so sure that I personally would use this that much, but it's nice to see all of the stuff here. And then the main thing that we need to talk about is the editor. And so just as an aside, one cool thing you can do is just hit random, and you can only do this in the app, and it will randomize the parameters. And so I'm going to just play some notes on whatever that is. Still got the ARP on. Okay, so up beside random is the init button, and we will initialize this. And so if you think back to the first video where I was using the knobs and talking some about wavetable synthesis and that sort of thing, I want you to see now that I can directly show you the mix changing as I turn the knob, and more importantly that you can see the waveform change as you turn the knob. So that's a huge improvement in terms of understanding the types of things that you're working on. Then if I want to change the bank that I'm in, I can click on that and just cycle through stuff. So I'm going to hit a note here. And over here I'll choose a different set of waveforms. Can change the mix. And so it's very nicely visible on the app. Now, it doesn't have automatic updating where that if you have a LFO sweeping the wave shape, it doesn't show that on here. That would be a nice thing, but I'm not going to complain. And so you can do it either way. You can watch the things on the app as you change the, like I'm doing the cutoff on the device, or you can actually just use the device to change the cutoff. And that's both X and Y sensitive, so I'm able to change the cutoff and the resonance simultaneously. And then the same goes for all of these envelopes. It's a great thing to be able to see what you're doing on the envelopes for sure. I'm going to just start with the amp and set some attack. Lower the sustain a little bit and then put some release on it. And so I feel like being able to do some filters and envelopes and such on here is a very big bonus. But all the other parameters are here too. So for example, if you want to change the unison, you can see that over here. Now you can also read on there, I'm not sure if the resolution is going to be good enough for that, but I can see what chord I'm doing also. And I'm not going to go into every detail about the app. There are plenty of things, you can change the amount of delay, you can change the delay time and feedback very easily, you can add in distortion, but as far as LFOs go, all of the modulation sources are here. So as you would expect, you can completely set up LFO on the app, you can change the amount of depth, and then there's a little place above the depth amount that you can tap on and scroll at to change the destination. And so like if I want it for cutoff, I can set it to cutoff, that's LFO1, and then I can go over on LFO1, choose the mode, I'll choose it to be free, boost the rate up a little bit, and you can control the LFO shape as well. And so there's a lot you can do from that. We'll see what this sounds like. I'm going to go to retrigger so we always get something. And so you just got to look around the interface. You'll see things about the scale and the root note, and it's a lot packed into this space, but I feel like it's pretty clearly laid out, and some of it might be slightly easier to access on a bigger iPad or on your computer. So take that in mind. But overall, I think this app is very useful. So I gotta say, overall, particularly for the money, I really like the Craft Synth 2.0. I enjoy doing sound design on it. I think that the presets that came with it are very nice. I feel like the Modal App is a great way to get insight into what's going on. I think that it's got really nice connectivity, and one form of connectivity that I didn't talk about yet is the synchronization. There's a sync in and a sync out here. This lets you hook it up to something like a pocket operator or a Volca. So to close this video out, I'm going to set up a thing with the Craft Synth and Volca Kick. I'm going to use some Volca Kick methods that I showed way back in my second video. If you're curious, go take a look at that. I appreciate you guys watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.